Welcome to the School of Psychology and Neuroscience here at the University of St Andrews. I guess our first question is, why study psychology? What is psychology about? The common misconception is that all I'm interested is in interpreting your dreams. That's not what we do. The important thing to realise is we need a scientific approach to studying the mind and behaviour. An important word here is science, because we're all psychologists. We all say things like, I knew you were going to do that, I knew you were going to say that. That works well with people we know. But with people we don't know, it's slightly different. At one level, we have biological brains, but at a different level, we have social minds. So psychology tries to address all of these different levels. The way that my nervous system works, the way that my brain works, my hormones and so on, have a great influence on my behaviour. But in a very different way, we're social beings. We like to spend time with other people, not all the time, but at least some of that time. So why do I need a scientific approach? Well, the problem is, we all have psychological biases. I have them, you have them, we all do it. So for example, we have stereotypes. Now sometimes stereotypes can be useful things because they help us to understand the world, but also they can be bad things. They can be involved in prejudice and discrimination and so on. Similarly, we all have a bias that we're very poor at estimating probability of events, what people are going to do next and so on. So you need to have a different approach to look at those kinds of problems. Finally, we all have a selective inattention to contradictory evidence. We don't look for things that disagree with us, we look for things that do agree with us. We spend time with people who agree with us. And of course that's not very useful as a scientist. I need to see both sides of the argument. I would never say to a student, what do you think about this? I would always say, how do we reason about this problem? Critical reasoning, everybody talks about it, but nobody seems to really get to the core of what it is. Critical reasoning, C-R-I-T-I-C-A-L, critical reasoning involves thinking, interpretation, comprehension and analysis for learning. And that's what we're trying to do and what we're going to talk about today. So, starting at the very simplest level, if we think about how our nervous system works and how it influences our behaviour, then clearly we know it's going to be linked to our genetics, to our upbringing and to all kinds of factors in our external environment. And we need to bring all of those things into focus. One of the core areas in psychology is neuroscience. And in neuroscience, we try to understand the processes that occur within the nervous system and in the brain that help us to use our environment in useful ways, to help us to understand our environment. And of course, at a slightly different level, we're all born, we're all children, we all grow up in different ways. So part of psychology is trying to understand ordinary human behaviour in order to help us to understand extraordinary human behaviour. So if I understand the development of an ordinary child, maybe I can understand something about the development of extraordinary children, autistic children, for example. Moving from there, we may also have an interest in how our senses operate. We seem to take it for granted, we open our eyes and we understand the world around us. But it's a very, very complex biological mechanism that's behind all of this. One of my colleagues, for example, David Perrott, Professor Perrott is interested in faces. Think about how many faces you know. Literally hundreds and hundreds of faces. Now faces convey all kinds of information, things like emotion, things like attractiveness. And of course attractiveness is very closely linked to healthiness. Dave Perrott conducted a recent study where he took photographs of young women and had them rated on how attractive they appear to men. Then he had them eat fruit and vegetables every day, 5 portions for 6 weeks. He took their photographs again after 6 weeks and again had them rated for attractiveness. They look more attractive. It seems to me if you want to have people have healthy diets, tell them that it'll make them more attractive, not just healthier. Moving on from there, we might also be interested in how we learn about the world. When you're a student and you're reading a textbook, it doesn't seem like this, but actually we're natural learners. The things that you know are amazing. But again, when you pick up that textbook, it doesn't seem as such. I sometimes get that experience that you might call the tip of the tongue experience. You know, where you know a word and you say, oh, it's on the tip of my tongue, but I just can't quite get it. Well, some people say that brains are like computers and they store information. I don't think so. I think brains store information. Everything that I know pretty much is linked to a story. And when I can't quite get that, when I get that tip of the tongue experience, it's because I don't have the bit of the story just before it, or maybe the bit just before that. That tells me something important. If I want to learn information really well, I should learn it in relation to different stories, and then I have more pathways to get to the thing that I'm interested in. Try this for yourself. Tell me, how many windows do you have in your house? Okay, that'll do. You're probably Picturing your house and walking around the inside of the house or the outside of the house, counting the windows. We're highly visual animals. So if I want to learn something really well, I create lots of stories around it, and I create pictures, images in my head to help me to remember that material. I also said that we're social beings. One of my colleagues, Professor Steve Reicher, is very interested in notions like national identity. And next year, of course, in Scotland, we will have a referendum for independence. And there's a very strong sense of patriotism here in Scotland. And of course, one question is, if you are more Scottish, does it mean that you're more nationalistic in some sense? And does it mean that you have to have an out-group, other groups that you dislike because you feel more part of your own group? And Steve's work focuses heavily on that area and notions to do with social identity. We could talk about personality. I could tell you that I'm an introvert. An introvert is somebody who likes to sit quietly, do the crossword, those kinds of things. Whereas an extrovert seeks out other people. They often say that introverts avoid other people to recharge their batteries, whereas extroverts seek out other people to recharge their batteries. But that's not the full story, is it? It's not just about my personality, it's about my identity. And my social identity is tied up with me being a father, with me being an academic, with my past, and so on. And all these things fuse together to identify me as me. Hopefully, throughout the course of your degree programme, if you choose to study psychology and neuroscience, you'll learn about all of these different aspects, and hopefully it will give you a better worldview on your studies. Thank you.